Hey guys, have you ever seen how Muslims pray before? They do these things called prostrations, where they bow their heads to the ground. And well, I was really struck when I saw this meme. And then this one. Then I saw a debate between James White and Adnand Rashid, and I heard this.
So, James, coming back to the two main points I raised about inward resemblance of Jesus, because outward, you don't seem to make a big deal out of it. Outward resemblance is not as important as inward resemblance in your view. I can somewhat agree with you, but again, outward is very important also. Worshipping like Jesus, like prostration, is very important. Christians don't do that today. They have historically, to my knowledge, Trinitarians in particular, Trinitarians have never worshipped God like that. I mean, to my knowledge. Maybe there are exceptions, but I'm talking... Sorry? Yeah, coming to that. So, if Trinitarians did not worship God, the Father, or the Trinity by prostrating, how are the Trinitarians actually imitating or resembling Jesus Christ in worship?
That really got me thinking. Then I did some research. And what I found out was that not only do Muslims do prostrations in their prayers, but that Buddhists and Hindus do as well. And after a little more researching, I discovered that traditional Jews also prostrate in their prayers. Then I began to think to myself, how far would Adnan be willing to go with this argumentation? Is he willing to say that Buddhists worship or pray like Jesus, that Hindus worship like Jesus, or that traditional Jews worship like Jesus? The idea is supposed to be that because the New Testament teaches that Jesus would sometimes fall to the ground with his face in prayer, such as in Matthew 26:39, that therefore that's how Jesus worshipped. And because Muslims prostrate in their prayers, they worship like Jesus. It's a really simple idea. But we just saw that Buddhists do prostrations, that Hindus do prostrations, and that even traditional Jews do prostrations. Does that mean that they all worship and pray like Jesus? Is worshiping or praying like Jesus merely confined to bodily motions in prayer? And another thing, is Adnan correct? Do Christians really not practice prostrations? I went back to researching and...
These are some of the principles and basics in the thinking of the early church. We are going to discuss some of the main items like prayer, prostration.
Whoa, hold on. I thought that...
Worshipping like Jesus, like prostration, is very important. Christians don't do that today. They have historically, to my knowledge, Trinitarians in particular, Trinitarians have never worshipped God like that.
Before we do prostration, we cross ourselves in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son,
Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.
And the Holy Spirit. And we, most of us, make our hands like this, fist, strong. And after we do this, we do like this.
And the last point, the seventh principle about prostration or bowing down, is mysterious partaking in the power of death and resurrection of Christ. We need to actively connect ourselves with the power of death and resurrection of Christ. His death puts our old nature to death, and his resurrection releases the new nature to grow more. One of the channels that enable us to connect with divine resources is the act of bowing down. Every time we go down, we proclaim that we are sinners, dead by sin. But we then go up soon, proclaiming that he has risen us up with him from death.
How did Adnan prepare for this debate? presumably knowing about it for months in advance, and not bother to do a simple Google search. Not only is it not true that Christians do not pray like that, but we know that the ancient church, the Trinitarian church, prayed like this. And today, Christians do prostrate, just like Jesus did in Matthew 26. What exactly does this all mean? Does it mean that all these religious groups and cultures worship and pray like Jesus? The Buddhists, the Hindus, traditional Jews, Muslims, and the Christians? At this point in my research, I realized that it's clear that we can't use prostration as the means to determine who worships or prays like Jesus. Okay then, who does pray like Jesus? And did Jesus ever teach anything about prayer? What about looking at the prayer that Jesus taught his own disciples, the Lord's Prayer? At the very beginning of the prayer, Jesus taught us to pray, Our Father. And in Matthew 26, Jesus addressed the Father in his very own prayer. I wonder why that part is left out of the meme. Jesus taught us to pray to the Father, and that he would do anything we ask in his name. So back to our original question, do Muslims pray like Jesus? No, because the Quran explicitly states that Jesus is not the Son of God, meaning that Jesus has no father. So how then can the Muslim get away with quoting Matthew 26, where it shows Jesus prostrating, but the very same verse teaches that Jesus was praying to the Father? So it's clear that a Muslim cannot be consistent when he's quoting from the Bible to teach that they practice or worship like Jesus, because they have to ignore Jesus' own words, sometimes in the very same sentence. So the next time a Muslim sends you a meme like this, send him this. Or, like this, send him this. Or the next time you hear a Muslim saying something like this,
Worshipping like Jesus, like prostration, is very important. Christians don't do that today.
then send him this video. For a more extensive refutation of Adnand Rashid, I'm going to link you to a playlist below where Sam Shamoun refutes point for point everything that Adnan said. Enjoy, and God bless you all.